Bill, you want to get going?
I will indeed, Stephanie. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Hayes. Welcome to the first meeting of the new year for the Emergency Planning Executive Committee. And for today's meeting, we're pleased to welcome, at least I see, two new guests. Maybe one is a member of the committee. Councillor John Saunders, are you a member of the committee at this point?
I am so.
Well, welcome indeed. I didn't know that. It's nice to see you there. And we have two other guests. Gail Little has joined the Emergency Planning Committee. Welcome, Gail. Nice to see you. And secondly, we have Adam from the RCMP detachment. I haven't met you face to face, which is probably a good thing. But it's nice to have you online. Is there anyone else that I should be mentioning there? I think we've got two other guests from Metro Vancouver. Jeff Fitzpatrick and Lydia Minot. Have I got that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Mr. Hayes, thank you for having us here today.
Just call me Bill, please.
Okay, Bill, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for everyone for attending this meeting. I'm sorry it's not in person, but we'll get through this as best as we can on Zoom. I should say also welcome to Councillor Morse. I haven't seen you in the new year. Is Alison there somewhere? Can't see her. Oh, there she is. And Sue Allen joined?
She's joining now.
Just joining in. Okay, well, let's get into this here. The main purpose of the meeting, in addition to being an update from the last meeting we had in November the 29th, the main agenda here today is focused around the rezoning application by Metro Vancouver for the new proposed park next to the well, down in the south end of the island. Let's put it that way. And I guess let's start off the meeting formally by approving the agenda. Can I have a recommendation, or are there any, first of all, are there any late items that anyone would like to add to the agenda?
None for me.
No. Okay. Well, can I have a recommendation then from someone, or proposal to accept that the Emergency Program Executive Committee approve the agenda for the March 27th. I'm sorry, this is the current agenda. March 27th meeting, approval of that agenda. Can I have a proposer?
I'll propose that.
Thank you, Liam, and seconder.
Allison, second.
Thank you, Alison. And all in favor of the
Aye.
approval? Any contraries? Nay. Okay, let's consider the minutes of the agenda for today's meeting approved. Now let's look at the second item, which is the adoption of the minutes from the November 29th meeting. And that was quite an extensive meeting, so I hope maybe someone has read. I hope you've all read those minutes. And could I have a recommendation to approve those minutes, or to make recommendations for adjustments to the minutes as recorded?
I'll move adoption of the minutes.
Thank you, Alison. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you,
Second.
Liam. And can I call for approval of the adoption of the minutes of that November 29th meeting?
Approved.
Any opposed? No, thank you. So let's consider that the minutes adopted for the last meeting.
Oh, excuse me, Chair. I'm just letting Nigel Malkin into the room.
Yes, is Nigel a guest?
I don't know. So possibly public comments. We'll find out.
Okay.
Maybe carry on then.
Shall we carry on? Is Mr. Malkin present?
Here so.
Okay. Well, we welcome a guest. I guess it's At this point, let me just get back to the agenda here. Are there any public comments on the agenda or the last meeting, or anything that the public would like to say? That being Mr. Malkin, I suppose. Councillor Fast. Oh, sorry, you were just changing your Zoom there. Mr. Malkin, are you with us? No.
I am. I'm just an observer.
You're an observer. Do you have any comments, public comments at this point?
No. I'm actively following the developments at the Cape.
Okay. Well, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, item number 4 is the council referral for the Metro Vancouver rezoning
Yeah,
application.
if there's an extra pair of reading glasses.
I'm sorry. Let's just continue on here. Item number 4 is the council referral for the Metro Vancouver rezoning application and the OCP amendment for the Cape Roger Curtis campground. And at this point, Daniel, do you want to make a presentation, or how do you want us to proceed with this?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a short presentation that just kind of gives the overview of the application. So I'm open to giving that presentation, or some committees have wanted to dive into discussion.
I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with the proposal, but could you just give us a brief summary, please?
Yeah, I will do that. Okay. Okay, so as the committee probably is aware, what we're discussing today is a rezoning application for Metro Vancouver that has for a proposed regional park at Cape Roger Curtis, so on 24 of the 10-acre lots. And what the proposal is to rezone the property to a park zone, passive park 1, with a zone variation over a portion of the site to permit supervised overnight use of up to 100 campsites. So shown here on the screen is the proposed conceptual site plan at this point, showing that variety of camping sites. So walk, bike, and tent camping, group tent camping, car accessible tent camping, and tent cabins. In terms of our overall current existing municipal bylaws, the property is designated OCP designation is R rural, and the zoning is rural residential 1, or R1. So the 24 lots under our current zoning are permitted each 1 dwelling and 1 accessory dwelling. We have other permitted uses on the property, so residential guest accommodation as short-term rental is permitted, and as are bed and breakfast accommodations. And the other piece that's just relevant for the rezoning is that our land use bylaw has uses that are permitted in all zones. So all zones are permitted to have bicycle paths, equestrian trails, pedestrian trails, boardwalks, educational interpretive signage, open space, natural parks. So if Metro Vancouver were proposing a regional park similar to sort of the portion of Crippen Park around Killarney Lake, or the Bowen Island Conservancy properties at Cape Roger Curtis, no rezoning would be necessary, and it could proceed under the current zoning. And in fact, several municipal parks operate with residential zoning as long as they're restricted to those uses, the paths, trails, interpretive signage. So in terms of just overall process where we are, February 27th, the applicant, and I apologize, this is hard to read on a smaller screen, but I'll give you the high points. February 27th, this application was introduced to council. Council referred the application at that point to a number of committees, to the Islands Trust, the First Nations, BC Ferries, Vancouver Coastal Health, and then staff will return with the results of that initial consultation to a committee of the whole. Before council would then, essentially as the rezoning process proceeds, council would be giving a first reading to an amendment bylaw. And typically at that point, then we enter a second round of referrals to committees, public engagement, the Islands Trust, before council would consider a second reading of an amendment bylaw. After that point, we would be required to hold a public hearing before council would have to consider a third reading, referral to Islands Trust again, and then fourth reading. So just my takeaway from that is just letting you know we are early in the process, and we would anticipate our normal process is after first reading that that an application would get referred to the same committees again. So this is your chance to comment on the referral as an overall concept, initial thoughts. Some committees have given sort of, these are principles for council to consider, or it's a chance for committees to say, we really need more details on these items before we can really give considered comment on the application. But just to give assurance that you would see it again should this, as this application would proceed. And then this is just that committee recommendation or council recommendation for the February 27th meeting. So you can see referred to a number of advisory committees and other agencies before coming back, and the public information meetings before coming back to council at a committee of the whole for more discussion. And then you'll have seen hopefully you saw circulated earlier today, some points from Metro Vancouver about their current risk management. So Metro Vancouver is trying to supply that to this committee to give an overview on what exists in their current park systems and what might be relevant to this committee's discussion. So I'm not going to read these out, but these are here and I can come back to them through the discussion, but that was page 1 and this was page 2 in terms of their overall training and particular fire protection response. So as I said, what we're looking for, this application was referred from council to this committee for recommendations, and that can take a variety of forms depending on what level of detail the committee wants to provide comment on or request for additional information. So I'll stop there and hand it back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Daniel. But that gives us a brief overview of the Metro Vancouver proposal. Are there any questions anyone has at this point about their proposal, or can we move on to the staff report, which I see is next in the agenda package? Are there any questions of Metro Vancouver at this point about their proposal, or of Daniel rather at this point? Does anyone have any questions or clarification or information required? Councillor Fast. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm on 2 mics, excuse me. I'll just come and talk over Christy.
Buddy, my question is just whether you can confirm, Daniel, that there would be on-site staff supervision, and that I thought there was a no campfires proposal. And so if those are, could you confirm those, because they weren't in the one page in the info that came from Metro Vancouver today by email?
Sure, I might, I see Jeff Fitzpatrick here from Metro Vancouver is looking to respond. I might pass it over to him.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Councillor Fast, for the question. Yes, I can confirm that there would be no open fires permitted at any time of the year on site. That's correct. And I think it was buried sort of deep into that summary, so totally understand if there is a fair bit of stuff there. And the second question was in regard to the staffing. And I can also confirm, yes, indeed, this park would be staffed by full-time Metro Vancouver uniformed staff who are trained in fire risk management, initial response, first aid, and a whole range of other training. The full-time staff would be supplemented by our part-time staff, who we of course increase staffing levels based on what's in the park, how busy it is. So of course the summer season, we supplement staffing levels, and those staff are additionally all trained. In addition to the staff that are dedicated solely to this park, as part of the regional park system, the park would be also supported by our system-wide resources, which include rangers, engineers, biologists, and educators and other folks involved in managing the land. Thank you.
Jeff, may I ask you a question with respect to what you've just said?
Yes.
I noticed in the introduction of the information the rezoning calls for supervised tent camping.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just clarify me what you mean by supervised in that context?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Supervision would be multi-pronged in that the uniformed staff, there will always be a presence of uniformed Metro Vancouver staff on site, maintaining the park, overseeing the park, enforcing the bylaws. When we talk about supervised camping, that would be that also overnight there would be a presence on site to oversee the camping program overnight. So that could be a camp host kind of position, just to provide that extra layer of oversight on the ground overnight.
Will you have a building on the site that like a house or some sort of an interpretive center, or is that where the supervisor will be living?
Likely so. I mean, the proposed camping would run from May through to October, so it's seasonal. So at our other say where we have a camp host, they're there overnight in a trailer through the camping season. So we're not quite there on exactly what that would look like in this park site, but yes, there would be a facility just to support them over the summer season.
I'm sorry.
Just a second. Can you confirm for me how you expect the visitors to come? Are they all coming by ferry? Is that correct? And how are they getting from the ferry to the campsite?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you for that one. We've got a mix of sites proposed for the park, and the majority of sites and access is proposed to actually be by way of bike-in, hike-in, or shuttle service. So as part of the park proposal, Metro Vancouver is proposing to run a park shuttle that would provide access to the park through the day. There are a lesser number of drive-in access sites proposed as well, and those are proposed, partly for accessibility and also to just to provide a range of options. So it's a long way of saying that we're working to provide sustainable ways for people to access the site that are not car focused, but there will be some car access to the site. So it's a multimodal way of accessing the site. Does that answer your question, Bill?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And did you say that you're going to build accommodation on the site
for the camp host?
No. Yes.
Yes, I did say that we will need a temporary accommodation for the camp host. Exactly what it looks like we'll determine, but likely it would be maybe a small trailer on site for the camp host to be based out of over the summer season, because the camping is just seasonal. Now, we do have an existing, I think everyone on this call is familiar with Crippen Regional Park. For that park, we have a park operations yard. It's actually right next door to the going on a municipal works yard. So there might be some basic operational facilities there that would support that as well.
And let me ask you another question. With respect to equipment, what equipment are you going to have on site?
In terms of just maintaining the park site, or for fire suppression specifically? I
was thinking mainly of fire suppression. What do you have resident on the site as different from as opposed to bringing something else from anywhere else off-site? Do you have something on site?
Well, we certainly will. So we develop wildfire preparedness plans for each park, and that includes site-specific resources, equipment, water sources, personnel, critical infrastructure, maps, key contacts, all of those things. So for each of our park sites, we develop these plans with our own in-house experts, but also with working collaboratively with the municipality and the province to determine exactly what equipment is required. So on any given site, it could be pumps, hoses, trailers, it could be bladders for water storage. So the equipment that is on site is tailored for the landscape and response. So we're still working through the park plan right now. But that's something that we would have in place for day one, and we would have that equipment in place for day one. Now, we maintain, so we train our staff in fire response and safety and all of those things. but we also the teams for individual parks are part of a broader network. So in the case of an emergency and training, we draw on our broader network of parks and can bring resources in. And of course, we work collaboratively and closely with our watershed fire suppression team. And that's a team of dedicated staff with that are highly trained and mobile around the province. So that was a long answer to a short question, but the answer is that the equipment on site is tailored to the landscape, and we bring in the resources we need for that response. Did that answer your question, Bill?
Yes, it did. Thank you. Another question is, do you have any other parks in the region that are comparable to this one, like Bunsen Lake or anywhere else? Do you have anywhere else that we can see as an example of what this might look like?
In terms of emergency response?
No, general, a similar type park with all your facilities and stuff. I'm trying to look and see what, if I looked at Bunsen Park or somewhere else, or maybe in the valley, would that be? Do you have something similar that's what you're proposing here?
Well, gosh, we have an extensive system, and I would. Every park is unique in its sort of landscape and the facilities that it provides, but we certainly have everything that we would provide in this park, we do have across the regional park system. So at its core, this would be, a park that protects a sensitive landscape with day use facilities and some overnight facilities. So we do have camping programs elsewhere through the site, and we certainly have extensive day use facilities throughout the regional park system. So there isn't every landscape is unique, but what's being proposed here is very much in line with what we do elsewhere. Our staff are pulling together a bit of a summary report. We've been speaking with Daniel and others on the team, just in terms of sort of emergency response, and we and our experience across the system, and we'll be providing that as a reference. So Bill, that's, I guess, again, sorry for the long response, but it's a way of saying that we don't have a one-to-one example, but we've got a system that includes everything that we're proposing here.
Bill, I'm going to interject here just for a moment. I note that there's a number of folks with hands up on the Zoom, and
I can't see that.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll play the intermediary to identify when folks are wanting to speak.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great, because we have Adam, who was first with his hand up, followed by John Saunders, then Alison Morris, and then Christy.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. It was Ed, and I kind of want to get him in there because he's going to the Malahat and we could lose him. I'm so sorry.
Right. Okay. All right, Ed, go ahead.
Thank you.
You're on mute.
Muted, Ed.
So, a couple of questions. What would be the maximum number of visitors would you expect at any given time at this proposed park? That would be campers, day trippers, etc.
Was there a second part to that, Ed, or
no,
was
no, just the maximum number of people at any one time? Campers, day trippers, etc.
Yes, thank you for that. And I might ask my colleague Lydia to speak a little bit about our visitor use projections. It's something that she's been working on and that we'll be providing to Bona municipality in short order here. Lydia, are you comfortable speaking to that piece?
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for the question. I am, but can you give me 2 minutes to just open the correct document? Can we just, can I just formulate my answer and take another question, and we'll come back to that if that is
That's okay. Fine.
And I will raise my hand when I'm ready to speak to that. I just don't want to give you I want to give you the correct information. Thank you.
And I have one more quick question. This is directly towards safety. Are there any other, how unique do you think your safety and emergency response has to be? Because we are an island with only one way on, one way off, and that being water access.
And I missed a little bit of that, but I think the nature of your question is how will we consider the fact that the park's on an island in terms of emergency plans?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that. It will factor in to every aspect of our emergency planning work and our planning work. So in terms of how we get people to and from the site, the capacity of the site, and how we respond in the case of an emergency, be it fire or otherwise, we would take that into consideration. Is there a specific scenario you're concerned about, or is it just generally
there's only one way.
We're losing you, Ed. I think we're gonna have to go. Yeah.
I'm trying to mute him. He won't mute.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Steph.
One road.
That's weird. I'm not sure why we can't. Ed, Ed, we're losing you. You're sounding like a demented robot. So
my secret is out. Are you hearing me now?
That's much better. Yes, much better. Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's back again.
Okay, I'm going to.
Yeah, Edward, if you could just mute yourself, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Yeah. Edward, just stop talking.
He's muted, so it's something else.
Somebody got two computers going in the same room.
Malahats.
No, he's in a car.
Well, I know, but it's odd that.
Yeah. So Edward, I think we'll try to get back to you if we can, but thank you for that. And I think we'll move on to Adam now.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my understanding is that currently only Metro Vancouver Park Rangers have the authority to enforce Metro Vancouver bylaws. I'm wondering how that's going to affect our ability to enforce anything within this park when it comes to responding to disturbances or somebody lights a fire or any of that. We don't have the authority currently to address that on private property. So we would be there for public safety, but beyond that, we have no real influence.
Thank you. And Adam, I believe you are with the RCMP, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, excellent. Excellent question. And so there's a couple aspects to this. And the first is that all municipal bylaws are, of course, applicable in the park. Now, with regard to the enforcement of the Metro Vancouver bylaw, in the past, we have authorized local police forces to, or deputized, or not perhaps using the right term, but local bylaw enforcement officers and police officers to enforce the Metro Vancouver bylaw. So if that through our emergency planning work and our work with the municipality, if that was seen as something that would be helpful in this regard, it's certainly something that we could explore for this site.
Any follow-up, Jeff or Adam? Sorry. Thanks, Jeff.
I was also curious, and I know it's probably a bigger picture question that may not necessarily just apply to this, but I'm wondering if Metro Vancouver has any plans to develop bylaws around drug decriminalization.
Do you mean in when you say bylaws around drug decriminalization? The bylaws we develop are focused on park use, and we defer to higher levels of government who sort of have the authority for that kind of jurisdiction in those areas. So it's a bit outside of our area of expertise. But if it's in relation to behavior within the park, that's something that we certainly monitor closely and work closely with local bylaw enforcement and police staff on. Adam, am I getting at understanding your question right correctly?
I think it's more with the decriminalization at the end of January. I think the province has put the onus on land managers to basically manage public use. And I've talked to a couple of the park rangers about it, and I know it's part of the discussions that are happening, but I didn't know if you had a timeline on when some of those things would be decided on or not. So
if I may add, Jeff, for some context, I think what Adam's speaking to is the province received approval from the federal government to decriminalize illicit drugs to a certain threshold. I think people can possess 2.5 grams of more illicit drugs than any other province. And there's discussions occurring currently around local government bylaw establishment to regulate the use of those drugs. And so I think Adam is wondering whether or not Metro is pursuing anything along those lines.
Thank you. Yeah, I can get back to you with a bit more detail on that, Adam. But we certainly have done so in the past. And the first when cannabis was legalized in recent years, we restricted the use of that in our parks in the same way we restrict smoking, which is essentially you can't do it except in designated areas, which are few and far between and unlikely in any new park. So yeah, we will be looking at that, and I can speak with our bylaw team and get back to you with a little bit more detail on the timing and our current thinking on it.
Thank you, Liam. You were much more articulate than me. Thank you for translating.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, moving on to John.
Thanks.
Councillor Saunders.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Fitzpatrick, for being here. I just want to, this isn't an emergency response specific question, but it does touch on it. And I just want to follow up on one of Bill's questions. In that wealth of information that's been passed on to us over the past little bit, including today, when you're talking about transportation access, it says in Metro will prioritize non-vehicular access and then discuss the different ways like shuttles, improved greenways, etc., which is all well and good, and it's great, and it's one of the things we wanted to hear. But when you say, and you may not be able to answer this, I don't know, but when you say, we're going to prioritize it, that leaves a whole lot of room for discussion. Like, what is the actual commitment, if any, in terms of, when you talk about, well, we could do shuttles or we could do this, but we're going to have to vote on this kind of on a goodwill basis, it almost sounds like right now. And we'd be really interested to hear what the actual commitment on that transportation might be, as opposed to a very broad statement that, well, yeah, we'd rather not have cars.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think there's I think if I'm understanding your question right, you're probing a little bit in terms of hard commitments to some of the ideas that we're discussing now. And I think there's a few ways to come at that. Through the rezoning process, we may enter into some agreements, or there might be some condition of rezoning with Bowen Island Municipality. And as we move through this next phase of the rezoning process, we'll be updating the information we provide based on all of the input and all the questions and all of these commitments we've been making. So, but in terms of hard commitments, I think we will be seeking our board approval of the plan, and we will be seeking municipal approval for rezoning. So as I said, I mean, there's opportunity for agreements or commitments through that process. And I think there's also through the planning process, the actual, the actual planning and design of the space to accommodate all of these things is an important aspect as well. Anyway, John, I hope that answers your question, that there are opportunities to formalize these commitments, and we will be providing it in writing, indeed, to the municipality as well. So these aren't just ideas; they are commitments.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think you answered that as best you can. So that's great. Thanks.
I note that Lydia now has a response to Ed Walkman's earlier question. So Lydia, if you could go ahead with that response.
Yeah, thank you. I think Ed asked a question about visitation. I'm going to give you some annual projections rather than, I think he was sort of speaking to peak. It's a little bit more complex for me to speak to peak on the fly, I'm afraid. But in response to this question, we are preparing a document which kind of walks through how we estimate visitation. So I'm going to provide a little bit of a nutshell, which I hope will help. So Metro Vancouver actually estimate visitation at all of our regional parks. So we basically have a visitor counting program in place. So there's a visitor counting program in place at Crippen. So at key park entrances, we basically kind of monitor visitation through very small infrared counters. So we have a good idea of numbers of visits at Crippen. And I just want to be clear that a visit doesn't necessarily correlate to numbers of people, if you see what I mean, because the same person may visit a park twice in a day. You may walk your dog in the morning, you may walk your dog in the afternoon. You were 2 visits, 1 person. So I just want to make that kind of distinction, because I think people often jump to people when they when they hear numbers. I want to give a little bit of context for Crippen Regional Park. So Crippen, I think off the top of my head, is about, I think it's 220 hectares. And of course at Crippen, it's quite a lot of quite unique facilities. All parks have unique facilities. There's an equestrian ring, a hatchery, dog off leash area, short-term rentals at Davies, Orchard, as well as a festival field and a few large community events. So I guess what I'm saying is all of these facilities kind of do increase visitation. At Crippen, we've been counting visits, and we've been counting them across our system for a number of years. But at Crippen last year, we had something like, I think it's 355,000 annual visits. So you typically, some parks are kind of somewhat flatter throughout the year, but Crippen does have that kind of summer spike. It's not typical of all parks, but Crippen certainly has that summer park. So what that looks like for a typical day in August for Crippen is about 1,500 visits. And I'm sure you all appreciate that estimating visitation at a proposed park is kind of complex, and we do this through a few ways, but basically, essentially, we can benchmark because we're counting at all the 23 regional parks, 5 regional greenways. So we have sort of some good knowledge on visitor behavior or anticipated visitor behavior. So we've been able to benchmark the proposed park against what we know at Crippen. And for full kind of park program, so full development of day use and the overnight component as well, we're getting something like about between 73 and 74,000 day use visits, and around about 10,000 total annual overnight visitors as well. So that's kind of what the range is looking. It's a smaller land base than Crippen. It's harder to get to. It's not in the downtown Snug Cove core, so we're probably not getting as many of these visits. So yeah, that's kind of the range of visitation that we're looking at, but we are producing a memo for the municipality, which will hopefully walk through.
Right. Thank you for that, Lydia. And I think we'll be really excited to see that. And if you're able to break it down into, if not a projected sort of day number, like, so those are annualized numbers, I assume, that you were providing.
They are, and I just yeah.
So if you're able to, at the very least, sort of break it down in a similar way so that we can understand what your anticipation is for the different seasons, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we can easily give you a sort of an average day, average use in sort of August, average use of the low season. So happy to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you can also provide the methodology that you use to derive the numbers, that'd be fantastic. So, and I think one of the questions that Edward was getting at, he and I had talked before, is given the proposed number of overnight users in particular, is there any thought been put towards evacuation and how you might need to evacuate, or how you would evacuate the park, especially the proposed campers in an emergency? So I understand you've given a lot of thought to wildfire risk management, but I think we would love to hear and see some thought being put towards evacuation. We do have a pretty comprehensive evacuation plan that was recently adopted. So you're nodding your head, so I see you're familiar with that. And so, and while we have that zone as part of one of the evacuation zones, it wasn't contemplated as a park, as an overnight campground. So any additional thought that you can put in that, and whether you have that a response to that now or later is fine. I think that was one of Ed's questions.
Yeah, I think thank you for that question. We are well aware of that, and we are well aware of the need to develop evacuation and shelter-in-place plans for the park as the plans come together. And it's something we worked very closely with Bowen Island Municipality on. There are, as you know, staging areas in and around the park, or Crippen Regional Park and Snug Cove. So it's something we're familiar with and aware of, and we will address in our emergency plans for the park. And we can get back to you with some greater detail on that as those plans come together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Next, we have Allison.
Okay, I've got a bunch of questions, so I'll maybe do them one at a time and get the answer. So I think people are concerned about rowdiness and that kind of thing. And so with Crippen, has there been a lot of need to call in the police from an experience from people coming in for day tripping and stuff like that?
The short answer is no, there's not. And we are compiling, we track in a detailed way all of the emergencies in our park, from anything our staff respond to, like, someone falling off their bike and needing a little first aid, to something more major. We track it all. So our team is compiling a little bit of a summary of emergency response calls that went out in Crippen, and also a few other parks across the region, just to provide a bit of a balanced view. And we'll provide that to Bowen Island Municipality just as a reference. But anecdotally, no, there's not. And it's our experience that our parks are not drivers of emergency calls for a number of reasons. One being, as I mentioned before, they're staffed with full-time uniformed staff who enforce the regional park bylaw. Two, they're designed and managed to mitigate risk. We are risk averse, so the way we plan and design our parks seeks to avoid these events in the first place. So we actively manage the risk, and our staff are trained to respond. So yeah, it's a long way of saying no. If we don't find that they're drivers of emergency calls, we'll provide you with some additional information on that.
So a follow-up to that one is, I think people are concerned that there will be more issues with rowdiness because of the camping rather than just day use, which is what we've experienced at Crippen. So sounded to me like your comments were that you haven't really seen extra issues with camping for rowdiness.
No, we haven't, and part of those stats that we'll provide are for our other camping sites, but it's simply not the type of camping experience we seek to offer. The camping or the overnight use in our parks is highly supervised. So we have the uniformed staff on site at all time, and then we have the camp hosts. It's not the kind of environment that tends to invite behavior, that rowdy behavior. It hasn't been our experience in the past because of that.
When the campsites are being rented, will the number of people using a campsite be limited? Like, could a group of 18-year-olds book a campsite and 10 of them come? Sort of thing?
The number of people on a site, the number of vehicles on a site are all restricted and done through reservation. Absolutely.
So when you're booking your site, you're saying 2 people are coming and stuff like that.
That's correct. There would be a maximum number of people.
All right. So looking at the thing you sent us today, I mean, I think one of the big concerns everybody's got is wildfire. You talked about them being 9 fire weather stations around the region. Are there any located now that would be applicable, to us and Crippen and Cape Roger Curtis? And if so, where is it?
I believe that, now I have to check their emergency team, but I believe the nearest weather station is on the North Shore. Now, I do want to clarify that through the summer season, we have a corporate, and by corporate, I mean a region-wide fire task force that's monitoring all sites across the region, because of course it varies, the conditions vary across the region. And the inputs to that monitoring group, there are the weather stations, but they're also driven by by observations of our staff on the ground on a daily basis, and our active collaboration with the municipal fire departments and the province. So there are many inputs guiding our management decisions, and depending on the fire risk, we change how parks are managed and how people can use them. So it's a pretty active and dynamic system that we have in place to monitor behavior in the parks. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. Now, the last question has to do with the smoking. So smoking's prohibited. But how do you actually enforce that? And I guess the related question to that is, we've had one of our citizens in posting questions has commented that, I think your fire was at Minnetonka last summer where the fire was?
There was a fire in Minnetonka last summer.
Okay,
yes.
and I thought the cause was listed as cigarette smoking. So I guess the question is, how do you prohibit cigarette smoking?
Yeah, so smoking in regional parks is only permitted in designated smoking areas. It's quite likely that there may not be any designated smoking areas within a new regional park, and certainly in times of high fire risk, there's no smoking allowed in a park at all. So in terms of how we enforce it with our rangers and operations staff and others, and it is something that we can issue warnings or fines for in our parks. And we also rely on the eyes and ears of the public as well in the park during times of high fire risk. We are quickly made aware if anyone is not following smoking bylaws, and we can respond pretty quickly. And of course, the other ways in terms of well-signed parks and information online and those kind of information campaigns as well. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach in terms of managing the smoking risk. It's our experience that in times of high fire risk, that compliance is good. And when we are experiencing high fire risk, we'll increase patrols of our park sites, we'll increase patrols of busy areas, we'll increase patrols of areas where we suspect there might be smoking taking place, and we can reallocate staff from some maintenance tasks and other tasks to do so. So yeah, it's a multi-pronged approach, Councillor Morris.
Thanks.
So, okay, thanks, Councillor Morris. Christy, before we jump to your questions, just hoping that the committee members are also turning their minds to what kind of a response back to council this committee would like, and if any recommendation would be going back to council, knowing that this wasn't the only opportunity for feedback, that there may be other chances too, but just putting that seed in people's minds. So, and thanks for Steph for reminding me too. So over to you, Christy.
Hey, thanks. Actually, well, my question kind of follows up a little bit on Allison's question about the fire at Minnetonka. It was pretty devastating from my understanding, and assuming that they would have all the firefighting equipment, and of course the city of Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, all those firefighting resources would be available. The fire, to my knowledge, burned for weeks. And so I'm curious to know sort of what happened at Minnetonka.
Yeah, thank you for that question. There was a fire at Minnetonka last summer, and there is actually a link on our website about there's a video that was produced about the fire and the response. Now, I believe at present it's suspected that it was human cause. In terms of the exact cause of it, be it smoking or other, I'm not sure if that has been determined. But it was. If I can think back to that, it did happen during a time of fire risk, and in the case of that fire, it was contained. I'm just trying to remember in terms of the time frame it took for the fire to be contained, and I can circle back to you with that information. But Metro Vancouver staff and our water services staff worked with the province and local municipality to cordon off the area and respond in short order. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question, or in terms of.
No, I'm wondering why it got to that point, like how it got to that point. Minnetonka is a pretty well-traveled area, lots of visitors there. Like I say, they've got really robust fire services around there, and yet the fire was still managed to get to a point of where it was out of control and did a lot of devastating damage to the area and the park. So that's my question.
The fire was contained within a number of days. Now it smoldered, and the park was closed for quite some time. But the initial response of containing it to that area was quite quick, and so the fire was actually contained in short order. And again,
so it's like when you say contained in short order, you're talking about it was contained within a couple of days?
In a matter of days, it was contained within an area, so the fire wasn't spreading or causing risk to any built infrastructure or other areas of the park. Now, the fire in Minnetonka wasn't in a highly accessible area, so the response itself used park trails as a fire break. And once those breaks were established, park staff and water services staff attacked on the ground and with air suppression by the province. So Metro Vancouver worked with the province to manage the fire, so there was no risk to infrastructure or private property or other areas in the park. Now, as I said, it wasn't highly accessible, so it did smolder and there were flare-ups, but there was staff on site 24 hours ensuring there was no spread. There was water bombers attacking it and ensuring there was no loss of infrastructure. And so it was very actively managed fire. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit more.
Okay. Just one more thing, Liam. I just wanted to mention that I feel like a lot of these questions are asked in the attached staff note that I did up for the meeting. I just wanted to sort of like remind people that the staff note is there, and there are a lot of legitimate questions, and sort of it goes into emergency response pretty comprehensively, which I feel like it's hard to navigate in this question and answer type scenario that we're having right now. I feel like it has to be answered in a more sort of fulsome and comprehensive way than what we're doing right this second.
I mean, the intent of this meeting is to bring the committee together to be able to ask direct questions of Metro staff, and we're really appreciative of Metro staff being here. That's fantastic, and to be able to relay concerns and then ultimately for the committee to report back to council about the committee's perspectives, ideally with a recommendation to council. However, it may well be that there's insufficient information at this time to make a fully complete recommendation. And if that's the committee's desire to say something to that effect, then that's okay. We can certainly collate the questions that are identified in your report, Christy, and forward that along to Metro, to Jeff and his team, and for consideration of response too. And so that's something that we can do as well. And I see, sorry?
Just on that specific note, we can include in a committee recommendation that the questions asked in her report be answered. That can be a recommendation.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah. So I think before I go back to folks that have already asked some questions, Christy, did you have any more? Sorry. Oh. So before I go back to folks that have already asked questions, I'm going to go to folks that have not yet asked questions or had made comments. And so I think we have Gail up next, and followed by Councillor Fast.
Yeah, just I wondered if just in terms of emergency response ambulance specific, when people are in doing concentrated recreation areas, there's definitely an increased risk of injuries. Shorelines and things like that is a pretty common injury that requires transportation off the island. Again, going back to the island problem as opposed to other parks, say an ambulance is called to a park on the mainland and has to transport somebody, that's not really a big problem because there's multiple ambulances in the area who can cover that area. And that's just, it's not the case, of course, on Bowen. When we transport somebody off, we're gone off the island. There is one ambulance on Bowen. There is one crew only ever on duty at once. So when we transport somebody, that takes the ambulance service off. There is no ambulance service on Bowen. And I just wondered if Metro has perhaps approached BC Emergency Health Services about the possibility of funding some increased ambulance service for the duration of the camping season.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We haven't approached BC Ambulance about funding additional positions. As I alluded to earlier, it is not our experience that camping facilities generate a high volume of emergency calls, but we do recognize the unique landscape we're operating in here. So as a next step, we'll be generating those sort of reports in terms of what the volume of emergency response is in some of our other facilities. And but certainly if there are additional steps required to make that safe, we'll be available for those discussions. But it is in our experience that overnight access to parks generates high volumes of emergency calls.
Okay, thanks. Gail, any follow-up to that or any other questions?
No, I don't think so. Not currently.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Councillor Fast.
Hi, everybody. My questions, I've got a couple of motions to propose. So on the ready, Steph. The first one is that EPEC refer the questions in the emergency coordinator's report in 4.1C to Metro Vancouver staff for response to her. So you can collect them. Okay, so I move that.
I'll second that.
Okay,
And
sorry, do you want to vote on that right now? Or do you want to propose a second one, Councillor Fast?
We can vote on this one first.
Okay, let's do that. Any questions with respect to that the motion? Alison, do you have a question?
You're on mute, Councillor Morse.
Sorry, it was a bit of a strange format. I'm used to reports that says, to the committee from XYZ. So, and it's just got the generic staff in there. So I just wanted to understand, was this a report that Christy prepared?
Yes.
Because it's not signed and it's not dated. So.
Alison, that was my question as well. So we call that, let's refer to that as the EPC coordinator as report. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and just for everybody's clarification, it's called it's at the bottom of 4.1C. It's got a number and then it says EPEC CRC MV briefing note. And the questions are in blue, just for everybody's orientation.
No, I knew all of that. I just wanted to know who had prepared it.
Yes, I had the same question because it's a very comprehensive report and question. And I appreciate the person who put that together. Thank you. Can I call the question on the Councillor Fast motion? All those in favor?
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Steph, could you go ahead?
Just about process. So I'm asking, the committee is recommending that council direct staff to ask Metro. I'm looking for verbs. What is our review on directing Metro?
Here's my wording. I hoped that this would work. That EPEC refer the questions in the staff briefing note to Metro Vancouver Parks, who are here in the meeting with us, for response back to her. Just because she's provided written questions as opposed to the verbal ones that we're doing here on behalf of the committee as our emergency coordinator.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we check on the process?
I'm sorry?
Is that legit, Liam? Can we refer something directly to Metro or should we be asking council?
No, this should be a committee referral to council.
Okay.
For council to then, make the request to Metro.
Okay, then I'll adjust that as a friendly amendment, if people will allow me, that EPEC recommend to council that the questions in 4.1C EPEC CRC MV briefing note be referred to Metro Vancouver Park staff for response.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's vote on that then. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
I declare the motion is adopted. Councillor Fast, you had a second motion?
Yes. I'm just going to take a crack at this and to get us started. and I'm looking at the recommendation on the bottom of page 2 of 3 of our agenda.
Yep.
And it says that the Emergency Program Executive Committee recommend the following regarding Metro Vancouver application for rezoning and official community plan amendment, RZ, and all the numbers. So this is just informal here, but my recommendation might be that the first point be that information about emergency planning related to specific island resources and constraints be requested. Just trying to say it about island.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you repeat that, please? Just a bit about resources or island, the last bit.
I've captured that information regarding emergency planning related to specific island constraints and resources be requested.
I think that's correct. This is getting at recognizing that this is an island and not a land-based park proposal. What resources are specifically going to be allocated or contemplated for this particular island-based facility? I think that's what the intent is. Is that correct? Okay.
And I'd like to make a recommendation that right now that we still have a couple of, I think, folks that may have some questions. And I think there's a few more points that we want to add to that recommendation that Councillor Fast was just putting forward. So maybe if we can hear from Adam and Councillor Saunders and Morse, if they have additional questions, and then we could focus the committee's attention on all the bits and pieces that we want in that final recommendation.
That's right. This was just to introduce this idea of island specific issues around emergency planning. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so let's collect all the other questions.
Yeah. So I think it's over to Adam again.
I think it's partly question, partly comment. The statistics that Jeffrey was talking about, I don't think would accurately reflect the number of issues in the parks. The park rangers come here a handful of times a year. So when they're responding to issues, it's not what's actually going on, especially not overnight. There are no Metro Vancouver employees in the park at night. That's us. So we respond to a number of things, and I can provide statistics that'll accurately reflect the number of issues within the area of Crippen Park if we're looking at it as a comparable to the new park. To expand on the bylaw piece, Councillor Morris was talking about and the enforcement of the smoking bylaw. I don't think it's as simple as just deputizing the RCMP to enforce Metro Vancouver bylaws. It would be an amendment to their bylaws, which would involve changing their bylaws with council, etc. So this is all going to take a significant amount of time, and leading into this, I think some more concrete answers on having access to that stuff would be important. From my perspective, if we're looking at the volume of users that they're describing, kind of just quick math, 150 to 200 people per day with upwards of 100 people overnight, I think that's going to significantly impact our ability to respond to stuff, as well as the ambulance, as well as the fire department.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Over to Councillor Morse.
So Adam's just prompted another question. So do you have statistics that are specific to call outs related to Crippen Park?
Sorry, were you asking if I have statistics?
Yeah. Does the detachment have, can you say that we've had X calls related to Crippen Park from people?
I can gather them, yeah.
Yeah, just from a interest factor. The other, I guess, is more of a, in some of our comments, should we be asking that we put in conditions on the rezoning, conditions on use in the land use bylaw, or that covenants be prepared that, that, you know, so that we have a requirement that there be no smoking, so that we have a requirement in our bylaw that there be no outdoor fires. So, and that kind of thing. And then I guess as to the evacuation plan, and I know I had a look at it before it was published. I don't see why we wouldn't evacuate the whole west side of the island, including us, out of Tunstall Bay, not making us go all the way down to the cove. So I think Tunstall Bay should be considered an evacuation route. And if my understanding is correct, the hovercraft can come in and pick people up. So we don't have to rely on BC ferries. So I think looking at Tunstall as a way to evacuate people, not dragging them across the island, is a useful thing.
Can I just quickly respond to that? I just have one thing that is a consideration, Allison. It's just like in the event of a regional disaster, where we're trying to evacuate, then the hovercraft may well be being utilized elsewhere. And actually, it may be utilized elsewhere at any point. It's not necessarily always accessible, 100% accessible. We also have issues with the Tunstall Bay dock, with depth and size, and the amount, the size of the vessel that would be able to come into Tunstall Bay. There's a lot of logistics around evacuation off the west side that we need to be looking into, I think, a little bit more comprehensively.
Yeah,
before we can make any, yeah.
I would like to add on to that. The we also need to be cognizant that the existing emergency evacuation plan does identify Tunstall as the primary assembly area and evacuation zones. And I think that we would just be asking that Metro staff look to that plan and see how that, if there would be any recommendations around amendments or enhancements to that plan. And I think that we also, I think we want to be careful not to overburden Metro with trying to respond to what an evacuation would be or requirements would be in the context of a regional scenario, because that is something that if there is a regional scenario that's overwhelming the region, I think having however many campers or day users at that park is not going to be something that is what overwhelms our island-wide system. So I just want
I'd like to add something.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Also, if we have 500 or 700 people in the park, let's say if we have 100 campsites full and still day trippers there, we're going to be looking at moving 500 to 700 additional people down White Trails Road, if it's open, to the evacuation area.
Correct.
Let's not get into this in too much detail, if I may, because it's coming up to almost 2 o'clock. Let's not get into this in too many detail. I'm going down a rabbit hole with evacuation plans. Let's just ask Metro Vancouver for an amendment to our evacuation plan specific to their proposal and their park.
I guess that's what I was trying to get at, is that I don't think we need to solve all these issues right away, but we can have covenants and conditions that these issues need to be addressed before certain things can happen.
Right. And I think in the recommendation back to council, we want to see more data and more analysis about the evacuation scenarios.
And we want the proposal.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Saunders had a question.
Yeah, a very brief comment and then a related question. Thanks. The comment is that preparing for this meeting, I started to create a whole bunch of questions about needed to be answered. And then I saw the staff note that Christy prepared, which is essentially all of those questions and a bunch of other ones. So thank you very much for that effort. It's very comprehensive. I know there's more going to be needed to it. Process question for Liam, I think, that the motion that Councillor Fast proposed to send this to council to go ask all of these questions. Is it possible to get that on the agenda for tonight? Because time is kind of relevant. You know, at least it's being pushed from the other end as being somewhat relevant. So I'm wondering, what's the process for us to, or is that something we can deal with tonight in our council meeting and bring it forward? I don't know.
Well, I don't know that it's critical to try to rush it onto the agenda for tonight. I mean, it may be possible, but Metro staff are here participating, hearing all of the questions. And if I was Jeff and Lydia, I might sort of take what I'm hearing and, you know, maybe start doing a little bit of that work already, and take that back internally on their side. I'm not trying to direct you guys, but
okay, that's
you
fine.
know, but yeah, I think that I know we do have some other updates for council this evening, but I think that turning it around right away after this meeting, right into our council meeting, may be rushing.
We've got a recommendation on the books about a motion that staff bring back all the referral comments to a committee the whole meeting. So
yeah.
So if I look at are there any more additions to this list of questions for the second part of this second motion? What I have right now are, broadly speaking, the island resources, island-specific resources be requested, information on that. The question from Adam was dealing with how can the RCMP be mandated to enforce Metro Vancouver Park bylaws as required. I think that's what Adam was maybe getting at. That's a long process, but he wants to know an answer to that. We're looking for an update on statistics usage that Amos, and then we're looking for the amendment to the evacuation plan. Specific, there was a question about Tunstall Bay, but I want to look at that generally. I mean, that is included in Christie's questions, and I think we could probably leave that evacuation plan out of this second part of this motion because it's included in the first part. Is that correct, Christie? Do you agree? Okay. Anything else we want to add to those 3 points?
Sorry, I have 5. So the one about constraints and resources regarding emergency planning specific to Bowen Island, is that then being referred to Christie's briefing point? Or that's one of our bullets still?
I think that could be a bullet.
Okay,
yeah.
And then I've got, sorry, do you mind if I go through what I have? Okay, and then I've got the covenants legislated by BIM be implemented on the land so that BIM has control over the land use. Is that still in play? Or was it ever in play?
That's really not.
I'm not sure anything to do with this committee precisely.
No, that was my comment.
Okay.
It was more that there's certain things that we could have covenants on that before certain uses happen, these issues need to be addressed. But that's something that will come out of the council looking at all the comments from the committees.
From the planning department.
Okay, and then I've got a bullet about evacuation planning, which we're taking out because it's in Christie's report. The RCMP be authorized to implement Metro Vancouver bylaws?
How could the RCMP be authorized?
Yeah.
I don't know. What was the wording?
How could the RCMP be authorized?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I thought you were asking me.
No, that's what Adam
well,
was asking.
That's Metro Vancouver. Thanks, Adam.
Information, thank you.
So we have 3 points.
Regarding, and then the projected use. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got one
Thank
small addition. I'd like to put uniquely in with unique and specific, because being an island is very unique. That's our issue.
Okay.
Can anybody understand? Did somebody get that?
Unique.
Is that the first point?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And Christy has something, Bill?
Yeah, I have something. I don't know. This might be just a follow-up for Metro Vancouver. I don't know if it kind of goes off Gail's question. Should I bring it up now or do you want me to wait?
Will it be included in the recommendation?
No, it's not gonna be, well, I don't think so. I just want Metro Vancouver to maybe clarify because Gail was talking about the strain on the ambulance resources. And so Metro Vancouver was saying that overnight camping, typically you don't see an increase, but with 74,000 estimated visits as for day trips, I feel like that could possibly increase our ambulance response pretty significantly. So I would like sort of further clarification on that from Metro Vancouver.
And Christy, I think you have included that in you've asked, has Metro assessed the potential impact of the proposed campground?
Yeah.
And visit population? I think you've covered that almost.
Yeah, well, pretty much. Yeah, I just wanted to specifically point out that really what they were talking about was overnight camping, and my concerns, or we should be concerned about the amount of day trippers that are also going into the park that are going to be impacting our emergency response capabilities.
Yeah, and I think
So not.
Sorry, who was that?
I
Staff,
would just
so
like
it's
to qualify a little bit on the day user. Not all of it, of course, is off island. So, and this is be something we can quantify a little more when we get into visitation. But of course, not all that, you know, a significant proportion of day use visitations generated by Bowen Islanders. So it gets quite complex, if you see what I mean. But I just want to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have three questions to be asked as part of the second motion. I know there's a question out there on transportation and all of that with respect to the ferries and all of that, but I don't think that's applicable to this committee at this point. So I'm going to leave that right off the table. So let's summarize the second motion of Councillor Fast. Stephanie, do you want to please give us a summary of what you have?
Constraints and resources regarding emergency planning unique and specific to Bowen Island be identified. Information regarding how the Bowen Island RCMP will be authorized to implement Metro Vancouver bylaws and projected number of the information regarding projected number of visitors daily and overnight use be provided.
Thank you. Councillor Fast. I hear you running. Where are you?
Here I am. Rather than saying resources and constraints specific to Bowen Island, maybe it could be worded as island specific resources and constraints.
Yeah, I like that.
Resources and constraints because we are an island.
Okay.
I've got that island specific resources and
teamwork.
Okay.
Constraints regarding emergency planning be identified.
Okay, so we have that as a motion moved by Councillor Fast. Is there a seconder? I see Councillor Morris. Okay, can we have all those in favor of that motion? Any opposed? The motion is passed.
Okay.
Do we think for the moment that relates to all of the agenda with respect to the Metro Vancouver proposal? Is that, am I reading that correctly, staff or anyone else? Is there anything else on the agenda that we should be dealing with?
Just that there's just a ton of information in there for people. They feel like reading.
I'd like to thank
your information items.
No, I mean in the content of the discussion for preparation.
Okay.
Council may have read most of this.
I'd like to thank the Metro Vancouver staff for coming here and just diligently answering our questions, even those you know directly and those you don't know. It's always appreciated to understand what's not known at this point and what may be asked for the future. So thank you very much, Jeff and Lydia. I appreciate that, and we'll leave you to go away and get us some answers. And remember that we're a very resource-constrained island here, municipality. Remember, we have very constrained time on our emergency planning coordinator. She's only part-time. So we're looking for all you full-time guys over at Metro Vancouver to help us out and get us the answers so that we don't have to do too much digging, but we'll be on board to ask you questions, which we'll look at your answers very carefully. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for, sorry not to interrupt you, Bill. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us. It's very valuable for us to hear the discussion and all the questions, and I hope we answered some of your questions, and the ones that we didn't will get responses to you. So we're grateful to have the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been on the table, so I know what you're up against. So thank you very much. Let's move on to the agenda here, and feel free to leave anytime you want, Metro Vancouver. And the public, if you're interested in staying on, please do so. Otherwise, we're just going to wrap this up here very quickly. Christy, do you have any additional staff updates as per 5.1? Or have we covered all of that? I'm sure you haven't had the time to do anything else, quite frankly.
No, I haven't really had a lot of time. I've been doing grant writing, grant reporting, and this. So yeah, I don't have a ton of additional reports. Is there anything specifically that somebody wants to ask me about? Because I can answer specifics.
Anyone? Hearing none? Seeing none, I say thank you. Council and committee updates, councillors. Anything from any of our councillors on updates that we should know about? I think we're up to date on that front. Thank you very much. Any other business at this point? Councillor Fast.
I just thought of one update that the committee might be interested in, and that is that council will be setting up an accessibility advisory committee. And so I'll be on that, as well as Councillor Alex Jurgensen. And however that may, so as a liaison between this committee and the accessibility committee, if there's material, I'll be bringing it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Liam, thank you very much for your stepping in there to help me with that. I was quite overwhelmed with what was going on. I couldn't see half the people. Right?
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. I have multiple screens. It helps.
It's very difficult on a little iPad to do that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are informational items concerned attached to the agenda. Are there any of those that we need to deal with at this point?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Okay, that's. I'd like to talk about the next meeting, and I'd like to talk about that in context of the rezoning application, and in terms of when we might get information back from Metro Vancouver. And I would ask the question: is it the desire of the committee to get together again to assess the answers that we have coming back from Metro, so that we can provide a more informed recommendation to council? I don't know what the timing is of all of this, so maybe Liam, you could help me, or Daniel.
Yeah, I think we're still in the early stages, as Daniel mentioned before. So there definitely will be an opportunity for the committee to reconvene. And Bill, I agree. I think once we get some more data from Metro, then I think that this committee could have some really good input on that. So I think it's too soon to be able to say when we should convene. But my sense is that, like, if things go according to plan and continue to move in a direction towards the proposed park, then sometime in May might be a good time for a meeting. And we should have a lot more detailed information back from Metro by that time. And ideally, we could circulate that, with a week's notice so that folks can digest it. I'm not sure, Daniel, does that line up with your thinking?
That's what I was going to say as well. If that's probably, given the time frame to get stuff from Metro and then let the committee have time to review it before a meeting, so it's actually worthwhile. That's probably what we're looking at sometime in May.
Well, can I leave it then with you, Liam, and your staff to come back and let us know when you think it's appropriate to have another meeting as discussed?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you very much. If there's no other business, then I can call for adjournment. 1:55 versus 2:05. So maybe we're 15 minutes over, but considering what we're going through, I think that's quite amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. And I just, do I need a motion to adjourn the meeting, or?
I think you can just declare it.
I can declare the meeting adjourned. And thank you very much, everyone. See you soon in person.
Thank you.
Keith,
Thanks,
have a good
Bill.
later.
Well
Bye-bye.
done.